Welcome everyone to our semi-annual meeting of the Strategic Energy Investment Advisory Board. The call is being recorded, just for your awareness. Briefly to go over the agenda, Paul Pinsky, Director of MEA, will start us off with some opening remarks. We have several new members of the board, so I will be conducting a Strategic Energy Investment Fund 101, just to kind of educate the board members on what we call the SEIF, the Strategic Energy Investment Fund. And that will be followed up by Jimmy Cobb going through some of our SEIF financials. And last but not least, we will have Eric Kaufman, our Division Director of Programs, highlight some of our programmatic efforts that are funded through the SEIF. We want this to be an engaging conversation, so after each presentation, there'll be time for questions from members of the board. We'll also have a brief opportunity for board discussion at the conclusion of the presentations. And we will end the meeting with a public comment period for those on the call who are joining us from the public. We do ask that who are joining us from the public wait until that public comment period before speaking up, and just allow the members of the board to conduct their business throughout the meeting up until that point. Again, for those who just joined, the call is being recorded for public record. And with that, Paul, I will turn it over to you.
Thank you, Lynn. Do you first want to introduce the board members?
Certainly.
Let them do it, either way.
Yeah. I think it's a good opportunity for the board members to introduce themselves. Mr. Pippett, do you want to start us off?
Sure. Good afternoon. My name's Bob Pippett, and I've recently been added to the board as a quote residential customer. I'm also the CEO of a nonprofit in Baltimore City, Healthy Neighborhoods Inc. And full disclosure, we've been a grantee of some of the funds that have passed through this source. And just quickly want to thank Landon for giving me a little preview. I needed I don't know what you get before 101, 001, but I'm glad to be here, and I'm anxious to learn and support the mission.
Dr. Mock?
I am Robert Mock. I'm Vice President for Strategic Initiatives and Chief of Staff at the University of Maryland Eastern Shore, and I've been on the board at least 2019.
Thank you. Ms. Perham, you want to take a moment to introduce yourself?
Hello, everyone. My name is Adriana Perham, and I'm so honored to join the board. My background is in healthcare leadership, specifically operations and budget with a pretty complex regulatory environment. I am getting my executive MBA at Georgetown University and in the process of founding Satara Energy Group, where we code and model electricity retail rate forecasts. So happy to be here and excited to learn from you all.
Thank you. Ms. Rory?
Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Lizelle Rory. I'm the Vice President of Distributed Energy and Sustainability for Southern Maryland Electric Co-op. So I'm sort of the cooperative representative for the board, new to the board. I'm excited to join and learn and engage with this initiative. Thank you.
Mr. Resch?
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Roan Resch. I'm president of a group called Advanced Energy Advisors. I've worked in the energy industry for about 30 years, the last 21 of it, specifically in the solar energy space. And I've been asked to come on to the board to represent or be the representative on the renewable energy side of the equation. I'm very familiar with the board, the program, as well as the funding sources as well. So I'm looking forward to the conversation and advancing this program because I think it's very important for people throughout the state. Thanks.
Well, thank you all. Let me jump in. I'm Paul Pinsky. I'm director of the agency. I'm also a recovering legislator serving in the Maryland Senate for many years in the House, and I'm really proud to be at MEA. I'm going to do a quick overview and then hand it off to my directors and assistant directors. The mission of MEA, which is the Maryland Energy Administration, is to provide clean, affordable, and reliable energy and reduce greenhouse gas emissions. So that's our mission. That's what drives us. We're committed to bring Maryland residents energy which is affordable and clean that will benefit them and also contribute to addressing climate change. We have over 20 programs, which you'll hear about in a moment from Eric Kaufman. So you'll get a sense of what our mission is. So, we're in the enviable position of like Santa Claus, of we're giving out money. So we're on the side of the angels. We don't have too many enemies, maybe a few who didn't get money, but by and large, we're doing what might be called God's work. So we have a solar access program, which is a new flagship residential program. We do community solar, which you'll hear about. There are many types of solar. They're rooftop on residential and commercial. There's something called community solar, where if you rent, you can buy subscription into a larger project and have your bill reduced. And then, of course, there's the large scale, utility scale solar. So we're involved in all of those types, as you'll see. We do investments in medium and heavy duty trucks, zero emission trucks and automobiles. We have also, for the last couple of years, been involved in a program for EV chargers. And then we have one area that Eric will talk about called the Open Energy Program, where we don't have specific programs, but if someone has an innovative idea that needs some funding, we will consider it. Now, where do we get the money to give all of these gifts and programs and grants and rebates? We get it from the SEIAB Fund, which is short for Strategic Energy Investment Fund. And that's what you are now on the panel to learn about and to help lead us. We have three sources of revenue. We're a member of 10 or 11 state consortium of the East and Northeast called the Regional Greenhouse Gas Initiative Auctions, also called RGGI. And that basically is companies that emit have to pay for those emissions. They go through an auction and contribute to this greenhouse gas fund. We also have another fund called the Alternative Compliance Payment, which is a result of the state's renewable portfolio standard, which calls for us for achieving 50% clean energy by 20, I don't know what the year, if one of you can help me with that. And they can either buy renewable energy credits or they can pay an ACP, alternative compliance payment, which is like a get out of jail free card, which is cheaper than the RECs. So they are, by and large, our large RGGI and ACP. We also get some money occasionally from Maryland Public Service Commission when they direct an order because of some mistake or misbilling. So so you get the money from those funds. I want to point out it's outside of the general fund of the state. So we are not reliant on the general fund. We have fund that is outside of that. That is a good thing and a bad thing, folks, because we have to submit a budget, as all the other 20 agencies do. And if budget times are tough, they might tell all the agencies to flat fund or maybe give a 1 or 2% increase. Unfortunately, we have more money that we could spend on clean energy projects. We have some unallocated reserves that are fairly substantial, but we frequently have been told that we have to also maintain a flat budget or 1 or 2% growth, because we would be an outlier to the other agencies and it might not look so great. So, and what complicates this even more, so you understand, we only find out once a year how much will be in ACP. And 3 years ago, it was modest. It was $5 or $10 million. It went up to 150 and then went up to 320. But it's unreliable. We don't know what the number will be, but we don't find out that number till like April 5th or April 8th, which is the last 2 or 3 days of the legislative session. So it complicates that. So let me cut to the chase and pass it on. I don't want to talk at you too long. Last year, because of the budget shortfall and people saw there was money in the C fund that was not in our budget, $240 million are taken out as other agencies contributed to the shortfall to balance the state's budget. So they took 240 from our reserves, unallocated, whatever you want to call them. And Jimmy probably has a better terminology. You'll hear from him in a minute. Additionally, last year, the legislature said, well, a lot of the ratepayers are paying a lot of money and we should help them. And so they took $200 million for what's called ratepayer relief. And that is to lower the bills of ratepayers across the state. Now, personally, I would rather have invested it in clean energy, which will pay off to the people of the state a lot more than having the bill lowered by $50. That was not my call. The legislature wanted to do it. There may be some who say it's pandering. I won't make a judgment, but the fact is another 200 was removed. So we had $440 million taken from our unallocated money. So we want to be very transparent and upfront with you. We don't want to play games. I don't play games. I'm pretty clear and focused on what I want to do. So let me stop and see if you have questions for me before I pass it on. And again, this is informal. If it's something you don't understand or want to make a comment, we applaud it and we welcome it. So I'm going to stop and let folks. You can either use the hand raise or you can just jump in and speak out with a question.
Hey, Paul, do you also administer the LIHEAP program when there is money coming from the federal government?
I think that's DHCD. Is that right, Landon or Eric?
Yeah, LIHEAP that's DHCD.
Okay. So in theory, some of the resources were taken from the fund for just to lower the cost of energy for low income this last year, kind of supplanting the LIHEAP program?
So this was separate. First of all, the 200 million was across the board. It was not income dependent.
Okay.
Now, a number of people said it should have been, and I would probably come down on that side. I would also say, not to confuse things, when we receive our money, and Eric and Jimmy can explain this better than I can, we do a pass through and we shift some of our money directly to DHS. And so there are a few programs that it comes to us and then it passes through because of statutory requirements to other agencies. But let's put a bookmark in that question, and one of my directors can answer it in a moment. Other questions or comments?
Maurice?
Thank you, Paul. We appreciate the presentation. With the discussion about improving generation in Maryland, how do you see that happening? Perhaps with understanding of the impact of the distribution agencies within the 11 states. How do you see Maryland approaching that?
Yeah, you're getting to the tough questions real early, Maurice. Look, that's a very important question. You know, we import 40% of our energy. Let me just be we are an importing state. Of the 13 states in our region that we are involved with what's called PJM, Pennsylvania, New Jersey, Maryland, 11 of those states are importers. Only 2 states export. Pennsylvania, because they have some nuclear and they have coal still, and West Virginia, which has coal and very little population, probably less in the Baltimore region. All the other states, Virginia, New Jersey, Delaware, Ohio, they all import. So, and that is a reality. Some states are, you know, when you have Texas, for example, they have miles and miles to put solar farms beyond where the eye can see. In South Dakota, Nebraska, they can put wind turbines till the cows come home, literally, and they can produce a lot. You know, we are not a big state, and we don't have a lot of areas on land where wind turbines will work. We have a ridge in Western Maryland. We believe we have offshore opportunities, but other than that, it's not going to work in Howard County, Anne Arundel County. They've been studied, or most of the Eastern Shore. So we are limited. So we have solar where we can, but you know, even with solar, we can't place it over the city of Baltimore or over Rockville. So we have limitations. Yes, we have the Eastern Shore. You drive over there, you see the big utility scale that go on for a couple of acres, but we're limited. Okay, so that is a challenge. Let me make one other answer to Maurice's question. Of the energy produced in Maryland, 40% of it comes from Calvert Cliff. That means 40% of the energy created in Maryland is nuclear. Most people in the state do not understand when they turn on their lights, it's very significantly because of the nuclear power plants. People across the state don't know that we rely on nuclear, and that's the 2 towers at in Calvert County and Calvert Cliffs. So, final piece of Maurice, to your answer. We are trying to expand solar in all levels, in the large scale, the medium scale, and the small scale. We're trying to have more energy efficiency to reduce the demand. We are trying to expand the use of heat pumps and geothermal, so less fossil fuels are used. But there are limits to how much we can create. Now, some of my former colleagues say we should be energy independent. It is virtually impossible that we're going to be creating 100% energy in our state unless, and we had a consultant last year or a year and a half ago, he said the only way you can get the 100% is to double your nuclear energy.
I just have one more follow-up question. Thank you so much, sir, for educating us on the challenges. I recall perhaps about 2008 to 2010 when I was at the University of Maryland, Eastern Shore. We developed a 2.2 megawatts solar farm with Sun Edison at that time. And in the last few years, I've been wondering whether it's possible for MEA to take on looking at how institutions can be allowed to exceed that legislative pegging of 2.2 megawatts per institution. Perhaps that could help some of these institutions with mandates and climate action plans like UMES and others, you know, Chesapeake and all those people that have good land to help the university system of Maryland generate this solar power, which they can all share in through either community solar arrangement or not. But one thing that is I don't know very well about is the kind of challenges the utilities are having in transmission. Can you please educate us on that?
I'm going to give you a short answer, and maybe one of my colleagues can fill in on it.
Thank you, sir.
For the large scale, the utility farms, they're over 2 megawatts, but we have one project of 312 megawatts that has been approved. We have, I think, one of 150. So there are some very significantly sized going forward.
Thank you.
Anything over 2 megawatts has to go through a special process called the CPCN process. If someone has 2.2 megawatts and they want to expand it and have the property to do it, and they have the money or the developer behind it, they can apply for another CPCN and expand it. I mean, we would love to have it, and we actually have some, well, we have some grants for more modest ones for higher education, for example, which a lot of institutions have utilized. But we encourage it. I mean, one of our ex-staff members, Eric Kaufman, who you'll hear from in just a moment, did a study, and I think he said we can reach our 14.5% carve out, which is what we're expected to get for solar of our new clean energy, without using any more than 1 to 2% of farmland. Some people are panicked. Some farmers are a little bit panicked, but the sky will not fall. We think there's a lot of opportunity for growth.
Thank you so much, sir. That gives me an encouragement when I talk to some clients. I appreciate it so much. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Other people, any questions? Ms. Rory.
Do you anticipate that the Maryland legislature will continue to look to this, to the CEF funds as a way to either balance the budget or continue to provide relief to Maryland ratepayers, given that there's not really any inclination that energy prices are coming down in the near term?
Unfortunately, the answer is yes. Not only is it looked at for budgets, solving the budget problems, there are a lot of legislators that have special projects, and they look around and someone will say, well, the CEF fund has money. And so there's a line out the door usually during the legislature of people who would like to draw from the CEF fund. And I try to continuously say, it's for clean energy. It's for clean energy. It's not for building a project that has nothing to do with climate change or clean energy. So, and some of our funds, as Eric will mention, are actually limited in how they can be used. That ACP money, although in the budget, you can change and broaden or tighten those requirements. But unfortunately, Lizelle, there will be ongoing efforts. And as I've made clear to everybody in the governor's office, I oppose using this for rate relief because it's short term. It'll help them this year, but it won't help the long term because clean energy will be cheaper in the long run. So that's a problem. It will continue. I did say, look, we are one of 20 or 22 agencies, and while we're independent, if there is a budget problem and people will lose SNAP benefits or health benefits, I can understand some money going to help those programs serving poor and working class folks for a short period of time. But other than that, I oppose people trying to take that money, but they will be at the door. Okay, I don't want to keep you all too long. You're going to hear, I'm not sure in what order, from Jimmy Cobb, who's my finance director, and Eric Kaufman, who's my program director. So, and again, when they're done, if you have questions, please ask. We're an informal operation. People call me Paul at the agency. I want us to be upfront. I don't like a lot of BS. And if people have a question or a disagreement, I like to have them aired. So, Landon, who's next?
I'll be taking over. We're going to run through a
Oh,
brief.
yeah, I'm sorry. I apologize.
No. A brief CEF 101 to the board members. I distributed these materials via email earlier today, but we're also sharing them on the screen. Once again, I'm Landon Farrig. I'm staff for the Strategic Energy Investment Advisory Board. Today, we're going to cover some of the basics of the Strategic Energy Investment Fund, or SEIF. I want to walk you through this and have you walk away with an understanding of the fund's revenue sources, limitations on expenditures, where we have flexibility to do what we want to do, and some current challenges we face when it comes to these revenue sources, and our desire to remain flexible as an agency. So what is SEIF? SEIF is a special non-lapsing fund that was created by statute in 2008 to replace the Maryland Renewable Energy Fund. The statute has been modified several times since its inception, altering the statutory revenue streams and their uses. One recent change of significance for that, for years, the fund was not subject to Section 7302 of the State Finance and Procurement Article. What this means is historically interest from the fund remained in the fund rather than reverting to the general fund of the state. However, budget language last year directed interest from the SEIAB to now go to the general fund. This reduces SEIAB revenue year over year and diverts some of the most flexible funding MEA had as interest income for essentially any purpose: clean energy, energy efficiency, transportation sector projects that Paul touched on, or even administration. This really does hinder our flexibility somewhat and should be noted. So what does a special fund mean? Special in this case indicates it's not derived from tax dollars, and non-lapsing means that it's permanent. The SEIAB funds the Strategic Energy Investment Program. Much like the SEIAB represents the majority of the funding for what we do is largely under the umbrella of the greater Strategic Energy Investment Program. By statute, the purpose of that program is to decrease energy demand and increase energy supply to promote affordable, reliable, and clean energy to fuel Maryland's future prosperity. Next slide, please. So over the years, revenue sources have ebbed and flowed, but historically, you could look at these three sources as the major contributors to SEIAB. As Paul mentioned, we have proceeds from RGGI, the Regional Greenhouse Gas Initiative auctions, ACP, or alternative compliance payments from Maryland's Renewable Portfolio Standard, and certain Maryland Public Service Commission orders requiring contributions be made to the SEIAB. As far as RGGI, the Regional Greenhouse Gas Initiative, or RGGI, is a cooperative among 11 eastern states to reduce carbon dioxide emissions from power plants within each participating state. Together, the states have established a regional cap on CO2 emission, which sets a limit on the emissions from regulated power plants within the states. Over time, the regional cap declines so that CO2 emissions decrease in a planned and predictable way. How does RGGI work? Within the RGGI states, power plants must acquire one RGGI allowance for every ton of CO2 they emit. The funds gained from the sale of allowances in quarterly auctions are then distributed to the member states, including Maryland, and the states commit these funds to energy initiatives. And that is our first revenue source. Alternative compliant payments, or ACP. The state's Renewable Portfolio Standard, also known as the RPS, requires that a specific percentage of the electricity utility sell comes from renewable resources. You can see them here listed on the slide. States have created these standards to diversify their energy resources, promote domestic energy production, and encourage economic development. I would note that waste energy and refuse-derived fuel were removed from the RPS in the most recent legislative session. So those are no longer eligible, though they appear on the slide. In Maryland, by 2030, 50% of electricity must be derived from Tier 1 renewable sources and 2.5% from Tier 2 renewable sources. This is accomplished by requiring electricity suppliers to buy and retire renewable energy credits, or RECs, in a percentage of their volumetric sales equal to the RPS requirement. This year, that percentage is 38%. Whatever percentage an electric supplier cannot or does not purchase from RECs, they must instead pay the alternative compliant payments, or ACP, and then these ACP are just deposited into the SEIAB. PSC orders. You can see some of the mission of the PSC on the screen above, but in brief, they're the regulatory body that oversees Maryland's utilities and energy suppliers. They serve a quasi-judicial function that includes the issuance of orders, just like court orders. Historically, these included orders authorizing the mergers of utilities within the state with out-of-state entities. In fairly recent history, there was a series of such mergers that yielded windfalls for the state, MEA, and the SEIAB. The most recent, for example, in 2018, AltaGas required WGL Holdings, Inc., the parent company of Washington Gas, in a merger deal. As a result, the SEIAB received payment in excess of $30 million. This next slide shows revenue by source over a couple of select years. The yellow represents PSC orders, blue is RGGI, red is ACP, and green represents all other sources, including any federal funds received. As we just discussed, the most recent merger order from the PSC was in 2018, which is why we see an influx of these funds in fiscal year 19. Moving forward in FY22, we see that the alternative compliance revenue begins to become significant. And by 2024, the ACP actually represents a majority of SEIAB revenue. This is expected to continue to be the case in the near future. So where does the money go? Regarding funds from PSC orders, it's truly dependent on the order from the PSC itself. Referring back to the AltaGas merger, I mentioned the $30 million in change was deposited in the SEIAB to expand natural gas service throughout the state. Now, that wouldn't align with current administration goals, but at the time it was a campaign promise of then governor that he would bring natural gas expansion to the Eastern Shore. The challenge here for MEA is essentially the well has dried up. Significant resources were to be had in the state when we saw Maryland's distribution utilities merging with other state, out-of-state or even international businesses. But now all the mergers that can take place essentially have, so we should not expect a windfall for PSC orders in the near future. As for RGGI, at least 50% of RGGI proceeds go to the Electric Universal Service Program, or EUSP, within the Department of Human Services Office of Home Energy Programs. This program provides direct payments to help Marylanders pay their utility bills. This is a relatively large contribution for bill payment assistance as compared to other states within the RGGI program. In fact, on average, RGGI states generally allot the greatest portion of revenue to energy efficiency programs. 49% as recently as 2022, and 61% all time have gone to energy efficiency. In Maryland, at least 20% of RGGI revenue is dedicated for that purpose, energy efficiency. And half of that is dedicated to low to moderate income, or LMI, energy efficiency program. Equally, at least 20% is dedicated to clean energy, renewable energy, and other greenhouse gas reduction efforts. Lastly, up to 10%, but not more than $7.5 million per year can be used for administrative expenses, including salaries, utility payments, rent, etc., to keep the lights on at the agency. The challenge here is there's no clear path for electrification here, especially without sacrificing other existing MEA programs. We can use the money allotted for clean energy for climate change, but that pot of money is already highly in demand and being stretched thin. The relatively small amount of RGGI funding dedicated to clean and renewable energy makes this pot of money one of the ones that is most highly sought after within our agency. So what is clean energy? As you can see, the clean energy category is broad, supporting renewables as well as battery storage and other emissions reductions programs such as transportation sector programs. Transportation sector funding supports medium and heavy duty vehicles, school buses, as well as charging infrastructure for electric vehicles. What is energy efficiency? With limited exception, the full amount of low to moderate income energy efficiency funding is concentrated within MEA's Energy Efficiency Equity Grant Program, or EEE. The EEE program is offered to nonprofit organizations and local government entities, and is designed to support energy efficiency projects and related activities that benefit Maryland residents experience low to moderate income. Grants are awarded for energy efficiency projects that generate significant reductions in energy usage, and then we pass along the savings to income qualifying residents. For general energy efficiency, MEA operates the Electrifying Community Buildings Program, which provides Maryland's community serving buildings with the opportunity to request funding for measures that facilitate efficient electrification of building systems, which may result in life cycle cost reductions, as well as zero on-site emissions. We also operate a grant program to provide grants for deep energy retrofit projects in commercial, industrial, and nonprofit facilities. For ACP funding, I want to direct your attention to the abbreviation LMIOU. LMIOU includes low to moderate income communities located in a census tract experienced low to moderate income or overburdened or underserved communities as defined in 1701 of the Environment article. So what is overburdened? Any one of 21 indicators make a community overburdened by definition. So many that we can't fit them on a single slide here, but we have some examples, including exposure to particulate matter and hazard waste proximity. I encourage those watching online to see the full definition on section 1701 of the Environment article. And what constitutes underserved? Underserved is a much simpler definition requiring only one of three criteria. At least 25% of the residents qualify as low income, at least 50% of the residents identify as non-white, or at least 15% of the residents have limited English proficiency. And for our final definition, for the purposes of ACP revenue, LMI is defined as a household with an annual household income at or below 150% of the average median income of the state. So the use of alternative compliance payment funds are limited to grants or awards that directly benefit these three categories: overburdened, underserved, or low to moderate income. Lastly, I wanted to offer this resource. The Strategic Energy Investment Program does have its own regulations which further outline how MEA can utilize its funding and how we offer and make grants. We're not going to discuss these in detail today for the purposes of time. However, these are the rules that MEA abides by in its grant-making process, and they may be worthy of review for board members. With that, I open it up to any questions there may be. Seeing none at this time.
Good overview, Landon. Thanks.
Thank you.
Landon, I do have a question. It's Bob Pipick. In going through the ACP, you said something about 38% being a threshold. Could you just describe that again? And then is that a figure that has been flat, or does that go up and down over time as well?
So as far is your question as far as its contribution to CEIF revenue?
No, I think you said that maybe I'm not understanding the ACP from the get-go, but you said there was a 38% threshold below which that they have to meet and above which we're paying into the fund or something. I just didn't follow it. I'm sorry.
No, not at all. So the RPS requirement this year is that 38% of energy that energy suppliers sell to the utilities comes from renewable energy sources, either tier 1 or tier 2 renewable energy resources. To the extent that the energy suppliers cannot meet that threshold through the purchase and retirement of RECs, that's when they pay the ACP. And that's where the revenue for MEA comes from.
And has that 38% figure been flat?
No, so it increases year over year until it reaches 50%, or 52.5%, including tier 2 in 2030.
Okay. So the increase in the ACP revenue is partially driven by that percent going.
It is. There is a corresponding decrease in what they call the, it's in the alternative compliance payment dollar amount per megawatt hour. So that over time decreases the cost of the ACP per ACP paid. So the volume may increase, the cost of each ACP or each REC should decrease over time, which is a mitigating factor in that kind of overall revenue picture.
Let me just jump in. If the price of ACP goes down and the RECs are fairly high, a lot of people will say, I'm going to skip buying RECs. I'm just going to pay the required basic payment, which is cheaper. And actually statutorily, it's been set to go down, the ACP. So I call it a get out of jail free card. It's a way for them, once either the RECs are all purchased or none available, the credits, or else they're too high, they rely on the ACP.
Mr. Rush?
Yeah, thanks again for that overview. I guess the question about I mean, you look at the trend, right? So ACP has gone from 35% in 23 to 57% in 24. Are the ACP payments made quarterly? Are they made annually, monthly? And do you have a sense, because there are only 33 million so far in 2025, do you have a sense of what it might be for 2025?
Jimmy will go through the ACP revenue. It is received annually.
Annually, okay.
Yeah, and the timing of that tends to be in mid to late April when we actually receive those deposits. So it comes right after this is a challenge MEA deals with, comes right after the legislative session, so it can't be allocated for the immediate following fiscal year. It sits in our account and then has to wait until the next legislative session to be appropriated.
Yeah, Jimmy Cobb will go into that in a little bit more detail.
Okay.
My finance director.
Thanks, Paul.
Why don't we pass it on to who's ever next, then?
Well, conveniently up next is Mr. Cobb.
Okay.
All right. Good afternoon, everybody. Thanks. Landon did a whole lot of setting it up correctly for what the CEF is. It's if you can go to the next slide. You know, when we get the CEF, again, it's legislatively mandated how our expenditures are set. Landon went over the percentages as far as what goes to energy assistance, what goes to renewable energy, what goes to energy efficiency, and those are all set when we develop our budget. Now, the Maryland Department of Environment, they have oversight of all the RGGI auction program allowances. We administer the CEF, we meaning MEA. Next. The overall directives for the CEF is that the funds are supposed to be used to carry out, the purposes of the program. You're not supposed to be used anything for the general obligation, other than as Paul and Landon referenced, that if the legislature changes or removes the requirements or restrictions, then it could be used for things other than what's set out. But we, as the administrators of the CEF, do not have the authority to do that. And all funds have to be appropriated through legislative process or budget amendment if needed in the middle of the fiscal year. The RGGI market, again, Landon did a lot of my work for me. It talks about, we have quarterly auctions, September, December, March, and June. And so when we're developing our budget, even though in fiscal year 26, which we're in now, we don't really, we project what might come in, but we can't spend all of the money, because when we set our budget, anything that comes above that, we hold for 2 years in the future when we're building our budget. And then you have, there's a big website for RGGI and what it all is. So this is kind of just a brief overview. That again, this is where half of our funds come from now, is from the RGGI auctions. What goes into the next one? Right. So there's a minimum price set before auctions happen. And so there will be no, the allowances cannot be sold below that. That is set. And then you have the cost containment reserve. That's some allowances that are set aside, that if you sell more of the allowances that are there, then there is a set aside, but that's only on an annual basis. For the last 2 years, the reserve, the cost containment reserve, was utilized in the first auction of the calendar year. Now that's set up on a calendar year, not a fiscal year. So in March, that's when the cost containment reserves would be available and usually are exercised at that point. Next. Then you have the ECR, emissions containment reserves. That's to, if the prices are low in close initial offering, then so there's always different mechanisms to protect the auction prices. And so again, here's another one that, the prices will not go below $7.86 for this year. And every year it will increase by 7%. That's statutorily mandated of the minimums. Now we'll get into what probably most important to people are the financial world. We had our most recent auction was September 3rd. There were 15 million allowances sold. The clearing price was $22.25. The total auction proceeds for everybody, not just the state of Maryland, was $337 million. Maryland's share of that was $61.4 million. And again, as I said, there were no cost containment reserves available because they were all exercised in March of this year. There won't be any available until March of 26. Here are the results of the last 5 auctions. And you can see the prices. So 5 quarters ago, the price was $25.75 per allowance. It went down. Now it's coming back up. So it's real difficult sometimes for us to really set a budget because we don't know what the price is going to be. We don't know if the auction in December is going to continue to go up or go down. But you can see the revenue, how, and this is how we're setting our budget, is half of our budget is set from this. Now, from the beginning of Reggie auctions up to the most recent one in September, the state of Maryland has gotten $1.6 billion in Reggie revenue. And so it's been very substantial. Here, now the 25 is actual FY25 because our fiscal year is June 30th. The fiscal year 26 is what is budgeted. So the total for 25 was $300.8 million. We had $267.5 million in Reggie proceeds. And again, the numbers that this show keep going up and down. So the projection, the budgeted for 26 is $221 million. But again, we got $61 million in September. So we've got more than 1/4 of our budget. But when we set the budget, we didn't know what the price point was going to be. And and Landon talked about the tier 1 ACP was $33.3 million in 25, and we're projecting $44.6 million for 26. We won't know that number though until April. But when we take an average of the prior 3 years to set the budget. And I guess I should also say when we set the budget for our Reggie revenue, we do the last 8 quarters for what the auction price was, and we use that. Okay, somebody has their hand up.
Mr. Rush?
Yeah. Hey, Jimmy, just quick question about the fund interest. Why are we not collecting any interest on that surplus you have?
Landon referenced that at last legislative session, we used to be able to keep our interest. It stayed in the CEF. Last legislative session, it got redirected to the general fund.
Okay. All right. So there is interest coming in. It's just going to the general fund. Got it.
Right.
Thanks.
This won't be on there next time. This was on a private, we used to get it.
It's a transition.
We would have had $35 million more for 25, but we helped the general fund's deficit.
So why is the ACP swing so much? Like, was there a step function that happened in 2024? I mean, it became 57% of the revenue in 2024. It was 35% in 23, and now it's down. I mean, again, it's a little bit of timing, I guess. but it's down quite a bit lower. Is there a way to kind of, hate to say predict it, but like anticipate what years that are going to be an extra large amount coming from the ACP because there's an increase or a step increase in the RPS requirements?
Landon might have a better understanding of that process.
Sure.
When I build the budget, the only thing I can deal with is historical information.
Yeah.
You know, because again, it's gone up from $50 million to 120 to 300 and 340 million. So it's
It's crazy. I don't know how you can do it because it's so volatile, between these two different funds. I don't know exactly how you can possibly forecast it with any accuracy.
well, I had black hair when I came here 2 years ago. So
No, Mr. Rush, you're right on track. The sudden windfall of ACP was unexpected, and it has to do with the fact that Tier 1 RECs are traded in an interstate manner, right? So whereas solar RECs are traded in-state only, like if an energy supplier here in Maryland wants to purchase and retire a solar REC to comply with the RPS, they have to do it with a solar project here in Maryland. Tier 1, they can go outside of the state into PJM and adjacent states. So those other state RPS markets matter. And we've come to a position where our ACP value is simply lower than the market price for RECs in other states. So the most economically efficient option is to pay the Maryland ACP.
Okay,
all right,
Thanks.
thank you.
next. Now this is, this gets what Paul was talking about earlier, just as everybody's attention. Now this is a combination of cash on hand, but what we always have to remind people is that cash at the end of the year doesn't take into account grants that might take 3 or 4 years to come to fruition. So we might have cash in the bank, like here we're projecting to have cash, but there will be encumbrances, funds that are already spoken for that are not available. And also, this doesn't include the 440 million that was taken out for the general fund or legislatively removed. So the closer number is 334 million that is there. But our appropriation, I did this based on what our appropriation is and what our revenue is, to just kind of give people an idea of the additional funds that could be available for other things, as was mentioned earlier, if we could spend more on programs. Next. Now, this is a slide of shows different state agencies that receive funds from the CEF. The 25 again is actual because we just closed the fiscal year. 26 is what's appropriated, from DGS to medium and heavy duty vehicles to, as was referenced earlier, the energy assistance. So there are various state agencies that we support their clean energy initiatives. So this is just kind of, and all of these, the majority of these are legislatively mandated. Some are done through grants, but the most are through state legislature.
Wow. And is there a reason why 2025 doesn't add up to that total? You're missing about $45 million. Is there another couple of line items there?
I'll have to double check that. It should add up. I will double check and send something out to everybody.
No problem. I'm just curious if there's some other stuff in there that kind of eventually adds up.
No, but I will double check.
Thanks.
One thing, unfortunately, PowerPoint doesn't do like Excel and add for you. You got to do it. Somebody have a question?
Ms. Rusher?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, just a quick question. Is there anything on this list that doesn't align with the priorities of the program?
Not on this list, no.
Okay, thanks.
Next. Then you get to the budget for 25 and 26. Again, the budget is started with the sub-account allocation of 50% going to the energy assistance, and then you get the 10% going to energy efficiency, low moderate income, energy efficiency, all other sectors, and then administration. What's not on here is the energy assistance because it's just half of the Reggie revenue. But this is because we don't control that budget. We set the expenditures through appropriation of the other areas. As Eric will reference when he gets there, he will, we prepare a budget on programs, and the programs that we can submit and manage are in these three areas outside of administration. That's why I did not include the energy assistance, because that we don't have any say in that other than they get 50% of the Reggie revenue. And I think that gets us through the brief financial side of MEA, how our funds come in, where they go. Anybody have any additional questions? Is it Mr. Tolkien?
I think Josh raised his hand.
Mr. Tolkien?
Sorry, I am not a member of the advisory board. Is it acceptable for me to ask a question?
Is it the one you posted in the comment section?
Yes.
The previous tab represents transfers to other agencies and annual mandated appropriations. It just it didn't include the one-time transfers.
So it didn't include the one-time transfer to the general fund, and it didn't include the roughly $200 million transfer to the okay. I think it would be very helpful, and I recognize there's sort of official and unofficial numbers, but I think it would be very helpful to have a graph with those. I mean, we're talking over $400 million transfers, so that obviously changes the I don't know the number a bit. Is the 334 million that Mr. Cobb estimated, was that meant to reflect those encumbrances?
Yeah, that takes out the 400 million that was referenced earlier.
Thank you very much. Really appreciate it.
Let's move on to Eric, I think. We'll open back up at the end.
Thank you, Director Pinsky. I want to keep it brief because I want to leave plenty of room for conversation. One piece of errata. I misspoke earlier. There's a question asked about the LIHEAP program and who administered that. Is administered by the Department of Human Services along with the EUSP program. The Weatherization Assistance Program, which is focused on retrofits in homes for energy efficiency weatherization, that is managed by the Department of Housing and Community Development. And as I'll talk about a little later, we work with both of those agencies very closely. And actually, we are working with DHS particularly to augment those resources with community solar, which we're very excited about. So let's roll through this. So just as a very, very brief, sort of top level overview, and we operate about 20 programs. It can go up or down, given year. We're always balancing between streamlining and a smaller number of offerings, but also keeping the tailored offerings which address certain specific audiences we're trying to work with and make progress on clean energy and energy efficiency, as well as deploying and working through the restrictions on funding we have. In the last year, we provided over 370 awards for grants and thousands of rebates, spanning well over $150 million of funding for clean energy, electrification, zero emission vehicles through grants, loans, rebates, and direct technical assistance as well. Now, a few highlights. So last year, fiscal 25, we launched the Maryland Solar Access Program, which provides incentives for solar to homeowners. It's a direct to customer rebate and also allows third-party participation through power purchase agreements and other mechanisms. And that was our first program where we launched a fully online application, making it simple for the customer, easy, and also helps us with data on the back end. We also launched education outreach through the Maryland Clean Buildings Hub, which we're going to be expanding upon with some technical assistance resources in the future. And the low to moderate income community solar program continues to invest in community solar projects across the state, and we've got some very exciting numbers on that, which I think you'll find interesting. And then we also launched the first year of the Affordable Electrification Outreach Program, which is engaging community groups, getting people who are trusted intermediaries and messengers to help us get the word out to communities that may be harder for us to reach. You're coming from the perspective of a government agency, so partnering. And then, of course, we successfully implemented the first year of Governor Moore's Climate Down Payment, which had 3 programs: community EV charging, electric school buses, and electrification in community buildings. And then, as I'm always thrilled to see, we very closely approached 100% of encumbering program funds. So getting the resources out there to where they can do good. Next. I mentioned the Community Electric Vehicle Supply and Equipment Program that was launched in 25. It is continuing this year in fiscal year 26, and that was one of the 3 programs from Governor Moore's Climate Down Payment. It expanded EV charging access to multifamily communities and those that are community accessible. Those that are used by multiple users or areas where candidly are a little bit of charging deserts where charging services aren't accessible, creating a primary barrier to people adopting electric vehicles. Focus on low to moderate income communities. And we also made funding available for planning, make ready, get the infrastructure ready for those chargers, as well as the chargers themselves. We went out with $10 million on this. And we were incredibly oversubscribed. We had 150 applications requesting $39 million. Obviously, we're reaching out to those who applied it last year who didn't get awards to come in this year, but just shows the amount of demand out there for this resource. Next. Community solar. I mean, this is a primary pillar of our agency. Community solar really helps us address scaling clean energy while helping to provide affordable energy choices for Marylanders. And if when applied in specific areas, can even help strengthen the grid. So we're really focused on scaling this up. The lifetime of this program has been a multi-year program for us. Up to last year was $50 million of grant investment that will fund 184 megawatts of new solar capacity, supporting up to 24,000 subscribers and the potential for those subscribers to get $180 million in savings. Now, some of that's estimates, based on projections, but it's really a good outcome that helps us address the needs. And community solar is something that almost everyone can do. And we're also working very closely with the Department of Human Services to use community solar to augment energy assistance. Next. Partnerships. We don't stand alone. We stand with our partners. We're working very closely with the Department of Housing and Community Development to expand energy efficiency, electrification affordably applied, and the adoption of EV charging in low moderate income multifamily communities. We're working with the Department of Labor to shift resources to them to augment the EARN workforce training program. We had one of the funding sources we had is offshore wind for training and development and capital development for the emerging businesses engaging in that industry. So we shifted resources combined with the Department of Labor strength, which is getting workforce training out there. The Department of General Services to identify opportunities for energy efficiency and decarbonization in public facilities. And then a major one coming into this year is we're going to be deploying $50 million. We moved $50 million to the Department of Transportation to get solar on state facilities, and we're working at the Maryland Department of Agriculture to expand the inspection of EV charging stations for both reliability as well as that when someone charges and plugs in, they essentially get what they pay for. And next. We are continuing, as we go into this fiscal year, continuing to offer our slate of core programs with some consolidations and streamlining and some bundling and tuning for audiences like focusing on schools and higher education, and really making the program offerings to meet the intersection between their needs and our state's energy goals. I did drop there's a link in this slide to the general notice of intent, which gives you a listing of all of our programs that are anticipated this year, and almost all of them are already out. And then we talked about the three components of Governor Moore's climate down payment. The energy storage grant program is out and almost fully subscribed. And already, the on-rate, we're working on the technical assistance offerings for buildings to help address energy efficiency in commercial buildings. And then we're continuing to pursue federal funding where remaining. We are in conditional approval status for the Inflation Reduction Act rebate program. So we are pursuing getting an administrator on board so that hopefully when we get to work, we'll be able to move quickly to implementing SEIAB, which is funding to help local governments and the authorities having jurisdictions over permits streamline and reduce, make it easier to get a permit done and get done right, and to be able to help reduce costs for the solar industry and those customers who are recipients of solar projects and then energy efficiency and conservation block grants for planning. Continue to work with the nonprofit community and partnerships with peer agencies. Next. This is the big one. So one of our highlight programs this year, is flagships, is the Local Government Energy Modernization Initiative. This is a one-time injection of over $50 million for solar and local governments. There's additional funding in here, which is how we get to 64 for electrification and energy efficiency. And what we're looking to do is something a scale bigger than most of our programs have ever touched before, is to partner with those local governments to provide for the counties. They'll have access to a formula grant, so they will be able to apply for the funding, identify the projects, get those energy savings that can help their communities and the cost savings that can help their buildings. And then the municipalities will have the opportunity also to compete for competitive funds, and it can fund renewable energy, energy efficiency, electrification. Next. And that's then to questions.
Ms. Rory.
Just quick question. With a lot of these programs, it seems like, it opens up and is an opportunity for whether it's residents or MUD owners or local governments to apply. Is there any geographic allocation of these funds throughout Maryland, or is it sort of a first come, first serve basis?
So it depends on the program. Some programs we do design, like the Energy Efficiency Equity Program, we do a regional allocation. Those are the funds for energy efficiency retrofits to homes, working through community organizations. So we do have a regional balance of that, so that there's equity across the state geographically. And candidly, a lot of the funding we have is restricted geographically to specific census tracts. Going back to Landon's presentation, we have funding that is restricted to overburdened and low to moderate income census tracts by statute. So we have to navigate all that in our program designs, but we do our best to be able to serve the whole state of Maryland and make as many people into our programs can benefit as possible.
Thank you.
Ms. Durham?
Hi, thank you. I'm curious overall, and for the rest of the board, how we see the balance evolving between this kind of short and near-term affordability and long-term investment and resilience and decarbonation, given I think the volatility with RGGI revenues and that influx with ACP funds.
I'm glad you asked that, because that is a challenge. As we're trying to forecast short and long term, we're trying to develop programs that get people help in the near term in terms of reduced energy use and efficiency, but we're also thinking about those programs that can help bolster resources that benefit the grid, energy storage, more clean energy, more Maryland-based clean energy that can help reduce those longer term costs by offsetting those future needs. But it is a balance. I'll admit it. Sometimes this thing gives me headaches at night, is trying to think about where we are funding today and what tomorrow is going to look like, and to achieve some stability in both our program offerings over time.
Mr. Resch?
Hey, Eric, good, great presentation. The world is kind of changing every day with respect to clean energy, and specifically the one big, beautiful bullshit bill act just gutted many of the programs for solar energy, specifically residential tax credits. The 30% tax credit is expiring on December 31st of this year. Have you guys factored that in looking forward to this next year and how you might modify the program, or do you anticipate that there's going to be a significant drop off in residential solar and therefore those resources could be reallocated towards community solar or something else that might actually be growing? Thanks.
I mean, like many others, we're trying to figure it out. Matter of fact, I just spent a significant amount of time today on calls with various elements of the solar industry getting recon as to what they're seeing. But a couple things. One, for our programs this year, we have made some increases to the amount of incentives available. For the programs that benefit like sectors such as schools, we've built in additional funds into their grant awards that they make what's called safe harbor and get in place to where they can get the tax credits, and they just can't claim that reimbursement. It'll go back to the fund. But it gives us a way to manage a little bit. We're also building in some milestones that help those projects that are eligible for safe harbor get the investment in place to be able to achieve it. Now, the longer term, that's where, we're looking very closely at where those incentive levels are, talking to the solar industry, trying to get a sense of where investor sentiment is. I do think community solar will continue to be a leading part. We're hearing tepid optimism from the solar industry that community solar may be one of those that is better off than other sectors in terms of advancing those incentives, but it also, is a way to scale.
Yeah, let me jump in, Mr. Resch. Look, it's going to it affected everyone because all the utility scale community, rooftop residential all got at least 30%. So they're all significantly affected. It's going to affect them differently. So in other words, for the utility scale, we met with them and they think between energy prices going up and them buying cheaper solar panels in China, ironically, that they think some of the big fish will eat the small fish. The small operators won't be able to stand it. And we sort of heard that a little bit on residential as well. I mean, the deeper your pockets, the more you can get through this. But to the bigger question, we don't know until this shakes out. It's going to take a year or two, we think, to see what's undersubscribed and what's oversubscribed. And, we're telling people we cannot fill the full gap of 30%. We can't. We don't have the money to do that. But we just don't know how this is going to play out. We also don't know how it's going to play out with EVs, with the loss of $7,500.
Yeah.
Is it going to affect sales? We don't know. But we're going ahead with EV infrastructure because we believe range anxiety and ability to charge is probably what's uppermost in people's minds. And we're hoping that the more availability of chargers, the more they'll be interested in buying an electric vehicle. So we're in new territory and we haven't figured it all out yet.
Well, two quick things, real quick. I think what you're going to see on the resi side, it goes from home ownership to a third-party ownership structure because they can still use the tax credits. So you're going to see that shift occur. I think on the, let's call it C&I, so commercial, industrial, and utility scale, they really have to commence construction by July 4th of this next year, and then they've got plenty of time to do it. But they at least safe harbor. Other states have basically focused on speeding up the permitting for those projects so that at least they can begin construction by July 4th of this next year. California, a few others basically said, okay, this is a priority for us. We want to maximize how much we can get out of the 30% tax credit. Therefore, we're not going to be in the way of these projects going forward. So it's just something to think about. Maybe it's not necessarily allocation of resources, but it's speeding along maybe some of the permitting processes instead.
It's truly dynamic. And one of the things I mentioned earlier is the solar app program, which has been adopted by Montgomery County, and we have grants out to other communities. That's an opportunity to take funding to modernize permitting to be able to reduce costs and streamline, which helps reduce costs of solar itself, so for residential. So there's an opportunity there for our local government partners to work with us there as well.
Any other comments, suggestions, or otherwise from board members? All right, seeing none, we will move into the public comment portion of the meeting. If you wish to make a public comment, please raise your hand.
Excuse me, actually, Landon, I had a question for Eric. It's Bob Pipick, about the local government program you ended with. Is that new?
That is new this year. It builds on the foundation we put in place with the Maryland Smart Energy Communities Program. It's been expanded to the local government energy modernization program, but the scale of it is brand new, and we've never operated at scale. It's a completely new program design tailored to the needs of local governments so that we can move solar at scale. Director,
sorry, but the intent,
Bob, it's a one-year program. We can't commit. This was a special funding request that the governor approved and got behind. So this is a 1 year. Look, would we like to expand it? Well, first of all, we have to see what the response is from the counties and municipalities. Some are be interested, and we've already heard some are not. And we hope, we believe this will lower their costs and reduce the pressure to raise taxes, particularly in those rural, the outside of the Baltimore-Washington corridor. So we'll have to see how many people take us up on it. If it goes extremely well, we will go back to the second floor of the governor's office and say, we'd love to have money to do this again. But right now, it's a one-year program.
Yeah, and we are buoyed by the level of interest. Hey, we're hoping for 24 in the counties and Baltimore City on this one.
Terrific, thank you.
Okay, Landon, back to you for public input.
Certainly. So for public comment, if you wish to make one, please just raise your hand. Understand that it is not a question and answer portion of the meeting, but rather just an opportunity to hear from the public and what they may want to see out of the Strategic Energy Investment Fund. Please limit your comments to 2 minutes or less. Seeing no hands raised. Oh, there we go. Brittany Baker, please.
Hello, everyone. I'm Brittany Baker, Maryland Director of the Chesapeake Climate Action Network. This has been a very fantastic presentation today. I appreciate it. And I just want to express our commitment to the Maryland Energy Administration and protecting your fund for the fantastic work that you do. Thank you.
Mr. Tolkien.
Hello, I'm Josh Tolkien. I'm the director of the Maryland chapter of the Sierra Club. It's a pleasure to meet all of you. I feel a very small sense of pride and possibly a little bit of ownership in this process, having helped advocate for Maryland to join the Regional Greenhouse Gas Initiative many, many years ago. I really appreciated the comments of Director Pinsky about his view of responsible use of the CEF funds. And I think that in the long time review of the Empower Maryland program, for example, we have the data to show that investments in energy efficiency are the best way to save people money on their bills over time. I think that that data exists. I think the challenge, which I think I would offer as somewhat of a challenge to this committee, is to put those compelling pieces of information into a proposal that can compete with the political urgency of giving money back to ratepayers. That at that point, we can't offer studies. I hope that there are proposals being made that can illustrate in concrete numbers what could happen with the unallocated funds, so that there will be concrete benefits to compare to the immediate benefits of giving money back to ratepayers or shifting it into the general fund. I can see and appreciate the huge impact of these programs, but if somebody said to me, compare the benefits of putting $250 million back in the general funds with the benefits of $250 million of additional MEA programs, I at least would not be able to articulate that. And I think that to stand up those programs and be an advocate for them, which I very much want to be, it will help for us to be able to put some numbers or vision to what that growth, those additional programming would look like. And I don't know if that's a request to MEA or to the advisory group, but it is something that I'm hoping to be able, we can all lift up this coming session. Thank you.
Thanks, Josh. Mr. Resch?
Yeah, thanks, Josh. You're spot on there. I think you're exactly right. Money should be going not to the utilities directly to pay the higher bills, but to reduce the actual bills, either through energy efficiency or renewable energy generation. But Paul, I wanted to raise something that you had spoken about earlier about how the budget needs to remain fairly flat or grow small, because it's, you don't want to become a target. But I would make an argument very strongly that I think the budget should increase at least by the percentage increase of electricity prices that we see within the state. I think it's only appropriate that our funding for energy efficiency, for renewable energy out of this fund is commensurate with the types of increases we're seeing across the board with respect to electricity rates, right? So we should absolutely not have a flat expenditure out of the fund, and MEA's budget should certainly be growing as we're facing increasingly an energy crisis that people face. So I'm not sure what the process is, if it's just political pressure internally within kind of the administration, or is there something that's more formal that can be done through the state legislature? But I do think the budget increasing and the expenditures increasing commensurate with the increase in electricity rates, which is between 11 and 19% this last year alone, is certainly appropriate. Just a comment.
Yeah. Lynn, I'm going to jump in very briefly. I think it's probably the last hand raised anyway. We were given a mark from the Department of Budget, who works for the governor. And so what our budget has to be, our proposed budget goes to the budget management, which goes to the governor, and then they submit a budget. So we can ask, but it doesn't mean they're going to do it. I agree with you. I would like to be able to spend more of those funds for clean energy, because I think it ultimately will reduce the price and our reliance on greenhouse gases, gas, oil, etc. So I'm with you in spirit. I think we can have a talk offline, but public pressure on the administration to say, let's really invest in clean energy. The money's there, let's do it. But I am restricted, because he has to prove we don't send all of our budget independently to the legislature. They all come in as one budget from the administration, so they have to approve each agency.
Understood.
And look, while I have the floor, I want to thank all of you, everyone watching and listening, the 30 plus people, but particularly the board. We don't want this just to be we talk and you listen. We're interested in your input, and I think the point you just made, Mr. Esch, about spending more money, I agree with, and there are lots of different avenues and channels. But we want to be engaged and involved. In January and February, we'll be in Annapolis proposing budgets, doing briefings. We would love to have you be engaged and participate. We'll try to keep you informed of when we are on the hot seat, and we'd like your either support or advice. And just because this is an annual or biannual meeting doesn't mean you can't reach out to Landon, who staffs the CEIF Advisory Committee, if you've got some ideas or want to set up the meeting. So I personally want to thank all of you. Landon, you want to close it out?
Thank you, sir.
Seeing no further hands raised for public comment, we can adjourn the meeting.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you all.
Thank you. Thank you.
Good time.